What's up, guys? Welcome back to Clayton Takes on the World. Today's guest is Christy Pritchard. I met Christy through one of our mutual podcast friends, and Christy and I had started talking about Bitcoin and spirituality and all those fun rabbit hole conversations, started to get to know each other. She brought me on one of her episodes, and she only uploaded like 40% of it, and the other 60% was so cool that I was just like, all right, Christy, we gotta do this on a longer form version and get it all out there. And so with that being said, Christy, welcome.
Thank you so much for being here. Excited to continue our conversation.
Yeah, keep it going.
Heck yeah.
Couldn't just do it once. Gotta keep going.
Not. So many rabbit holes a little time. That seemed to be a pretty common phrase in our last one, but those rabbit holes, there's a lot of juice in there.
Oh, I know. And hopefully we're able to capture just 1/10 of the juice in this.
Oh, we will.
I'm sure people will love it.
Absolutely.
So let's get the conversation started with, a huge thing that I love talking about in my podcast is people's journeys and figuring out how they found out how they wanted to be in life. So little Christy Pritchard, whenever you had a parent or a guardian or a teacher came up to you for the first time and said, well, Christy, what do you want to be when you grow up? What was the first thing that, came to mind?
100% it was a lawyer, because my family comes from we started one of the largest law firms in Canada called Lawson and Lindell.
Oh, wow.
And that's my grandfather's firm. He passed away before I was born, but David Lawson. And so it was just at a very young age, just admiring what my family did. No one was working in the firm at the time or anything, but my mom talked about him a lot, and it was her dad. So yeah, I just kind of was groomed into that. But that didn't last too long, because I hit my rebellion phase, and then I just was black sheeping my way through the rest of my life. So I kind of veered away from that initial young Christy plan in pretty glorious and hectic fashion.
I mean, I guess I grew up with a sister, and so I'm very aware of the rebellious girl stages that you guys go through. Mm-hmm. I'm sure we all do at some point.
Oh, definitely. It's a teenager thing, I think.
Yeah. So if it was a teenager thing, like at what point did you kind of hit, like, what was your kind of thought process with like being a lawyer? Was it like, well, everybody's doing it, so I might as well do it? And then was it just one day you were like, nope, no, not anymore?
It was kind of, I just wanted to impress and wanted to gain approval, I guess, from my family. The extended, like my grandmother and the rest of my family, I was looking for approval. My mom never gave any fucks about approval, so I was getting this kind of on my own accord. And my family had a pretty big bump in the road when I was a teenager, and there was like some accusations flying around with my stepfather and things involving my sister, and it really kind of that flipped a switch in me, for sure. There was just a lot of trauma immediately in a very quick way. You can imagine what that was. And then it was right after that, it was drugs, alcohol, mohawks, zero fucks. It was a big, huge kerfuffle. And yeah, I think I was like 12. So that flipped the switch for me, for sure. And then after that, I didn't know. I had no plans after that. I just kind of floated and kind of got into the rave scene a little bit and started experimenting with just different thought modalities in life, and moved to Los Angeles.
You kind of had a pretty hard rebellion. And I think, to plug your podcast, I think you had an episode that kind of dove into all this a little bit.
It did.
Deeper.
40 years and 20 minutes, just because I was getting asked a lot why I was doing the podcast to begin with, and what kind of triggered my healing process. And it was reflecting on that time and coming out of years of overconsumption of drugs and alcohol and numbing and all that stuff. And I touch on where it stemmed from in that episode, for sure. But I tried to keep that part short, because it's more about the healing process. I don't like to live in that part of the past. I like to look at what we're doing now to move forward, and just to accept our
how to kind of move
current
forward.
fate. Yeah. And just be as present as possible, rather than dwelling in something that we can't change, but that shaped us,
Right. How you're able to kind of grow from it and keep moving on.
Exactly.
Well, so then let's get into the healing part of it. How did you, so I've kind of dabbled in the rave scene, but I guess I didn't do that until, my probably mid
Oh
20s,
yeah, most people.
like early
That's a normal
20s.
age. Most of the people I hung out with were that age, so that's pretty normal.
Uh,
Yeah.
that's more normal.
Yeah.
So what's it like? I mean, how did you kind of find that scene? Like, how did you, I mean, you went through this like rebellious scene. Sounds like some trauma occurred. Um, what, like, how did you kind of just fall into it? Did it just kind of show up and you were just like, well, that seems like the most rebellious thing I could do, so I'm going to do that?
It's funny. I don't really like little steps happened, and little steps would move me to one specific incident that got me to one place. So, for example, at the time when the incident happened with the family, my mom and stepbrother and sister and I and stepdad were living in Canada, and that happened. And my mom was a sexual abuse counselor and drug and alcohol counselor at the time and therapist. So there was just a lot of shame on her part that things were going on, so she thought, under her nose, and she just wanted to run away. So her and I
Right.
moved, just the two of us moved to Los Angeles in 1993, and I went to high school down there, and that's when the rave scene was really kind of kicking into high gear. And my friends in Topanga Canyon that I had, they were mischievous as well. You find your own no matter where you go. My mom kind of wanted me away from my current friends too, because we were getting into a lot of trouble. But if it's in you, it's in you, and we're magnets, right? So we
Hmm.
attract exactly what we're about and what we're seeking, and on a very subconscious level, that's what I was seeking. And so I found some very dear friends, and we just kind of were hearing about these things and kind of experimenting with MDMA and acid and LSD and all that stuff. So yeah, just opportunities would pop up. We'd see these little flyers at school, and we'd go and take like two buses to get to this very secret location, and one thing leads to
Right.
another, and then from there I ended up meeting a lot of like older people that were super lovely, though. Like that scene was actually probably the best thing to overcome trauma. And I'm not supporting or condoning drug use like in any way, shape, or form. However, doing MDMA, I think, really helped me broaden my scope and open my eyes and move away from the trauma response and into like a more loving. And I've actually been putting these connections together a lot just in recent months. And it's 25 years later. So it's pretty interesting how that all unfolded and evolved and helped my healing in a way. It can go down two slippery slopes, though,
Right.
kids. So be careful. I lucked out. But not everyone does, especially nowadays. Things are quite different with what's
Right.
being
I mean, there's,
produced. Yeah, and the dangers
yeah,
out there. It's a totally different world. So I definitely don't condone it.
the
But
way things are being cut
yeah,
and all
exactly,
that kind of
exactly. And
stuff.
the people
You
that are
definitely have
just
to be
at
careful.
yeah, and the people that are at parties. It's just you hear of a lot of incidences involving women and stuff that you don't really want to get into. And my friends and I were all pretty lucky.
Yeah, which is just actually a pretty interesting point that you bring up. There's a couple interesting points you bring up. Number one is me thinking about, kind of the effects of stuff like MDMA, where it is kind of that, how do you want to call it? Like a serotonin booster almost,
Yeah.
like the empathy almost booster that puts you more in touch with being empathetic towards other people, or, being able to connect with people kind of on that more deeper
It's like more of
level
an
per
intimate
se.
level. Yeah, exactly. And it definitely opens and broadens your scope to a degree. And especially now they're using it in therapeutic settings. So it's very controlled, everything's tested. You're with a therapist. It was used for that actually in the 70s for marriage. I think 70s, maybe it was even earlier than that. It could have been 50s. But it was for marriage counseling. And so it has, yeah, it opens your receptors to just being a little bit more positive, and I don't know, just everything gets warm and fuzzy and it feels great. I haven't done it in decades, but I just do remember it now looking back. I don't think I would have had I gotten into any other substances. Like there's a lot of numbing agents out there, like crystal meth and heroin. Like
Right.
had I gotten into those
Well,
heavily, then that would have been a totally different ball game. But MDMA just at the time.
and that's kind of the way that I guess mentally have been starting to associate drugs in my mind, where it's kind of like that separation between like psychedelics almost, and then like the hardcore stuff, which is, and I mean, I guess hardcore is kind of relative. I guess in my mind, like stuff that kind of numbs,
Yeah,
right? So like
exactly.
whether
I
it
was
be
just
like
gonna say.
Coke or like meth or
Yeah.
hell, even majority of like maybe the prescription stuff that they
Pharmaceuticals,
push on people. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And
Yeah.
those are long
Heroin.
term, that's actually how my mom passed away. It was from overuse of pharmaceuticals over years and liver failure. And there's just so much damage in there emotionally and side effects and, and crash and burn. And you need this to supplement that. And you're on one thing to bring you up and
Right.
another to bring you down. So pharmaceuticals are definitely a very scary path to go down. But yeah, as far as hard drugs are concerned, there are some that open you up and there are some that are shut you down. So, and there's some that have great peaks and really low valleys and that are very addictive. Those are substances obviously to look out for. But yeah, there's two
Which
different
is,
classes.
yeah. And I think that's something that definitely gets lost, right? In the conversation, right? I'm not, again, not advocating anyone does drugs. I think, as Christy's even pointed out that, there's an environment, which we kind of loosely went over. There's environment and then knowing, what's in these things, because especially nowadays, I know a lot of, especially probably more famous people. The first one off the top of my head being Mac Miller. You get stuff cut with, Ritalin or, any of these more dangerous, more potent drugs that they're producing in pharmaceutical settings. And it becomes very dangerous for the people using it. Yeah. So it's, it's funny. It just feels like we kind of like very easily went into this conversation, but it should be handled with the utmost, care, protection and sincerity. Care and all that.
Definitely. Yeah, we definitely have an issue here in Canada too. I'm sure it's the name of the actual substance that's being used and everything is escaping me, but I've lost friends to it, and it is a very real thing, and it is a pharmaceutical. And I don't know why I can't remember the name of it, but
Is it Ritalin?
No,
or Ritalin?
No, Ritalin is one, but that's like for people who have ADHD.
Is that the study drug?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If people have ADHD, I think take Ritalin, or you can take it to study. Fentanyl. Sorry, it's fentanyl.
Fentanyl. Yes.
Yeah. And
okay, that was
that's in a lot.
Yeah,
a lot of just it's not even just in coke anymore. It's in just a lot of substances. So, which is really unfortunate. It's actually taken out quite a few friends who I didn't even know had issues. So, definitely kids out there, don't be doing anything. And don't be doing anything that's not controlled by someone or tested. Yeah, we did go down a rabbit hole, didn't we? That's great.
Yeah, that's what we do here.
That's what we do here, exactly.
Should probably change the name of the podcast to Rabbit Holes. Yeah.
I'm all for it. That's awesome.
But on the positive light, I know that there's a lot of companies, even some publicly traded companies now, that are starting to study like the effects of the
ketamine,
more positive drugs.
Yeah. Well, there's ketamine, like there's psilocybin, MDMA are all being studied right now, which we need.
LSD.
LSD, exactly. Yeah. So they're relooking at some of the things that were actually positively shaping society way back when, and I'm surprised because a lot of these substances, like psilocybin, for example, it's usually like a couple of sessions in a therapeutic setting, and it can cure depression. It's been found in certain studies. I think there was one that was done in the Lancet. A friend sent me a study, and a very highly regarded publication, a peer-reviewed publication, and there are studies being conducted, and people are cured of their depression. And so it's not a very good business model when you can cure someone of their depression. So that's why Big Pharma, I think, has stayed away from it. So I don't really know. These companies that are coming out are more smaller scale. It's not Big Pharma for right now. But well, let's just hope that the studies continue and the benefits continue, and everyone keeps up with their healing path, because it gives a lot of hope to a lot of people who are stuck doing pills, like my mom was. So.
Right. Yeah. It provides that level of, and I think this kind of touches on what you were getting at, what we were getting at earlier with how we were talking about MDMA kind of changes like that empathetic level.
Yeah, it changes some receptors, changes some neural pathways for sure. I'm not sure exactly which.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, psychedelics in general, they seem to, connect different neurons, or, kind of rewire your brain almost to be able to see, like, I guess, like, to be more empathetic, or to release maybe those traumas that you've had and that's causing depression, that feels like all this weight that's bringing you down.
Exactly.
Or,
exactly. And I think you also get like a bird's eye perspective of human consciousness, and it really puts things into perspective when you're looking at things with a grander scope. You're not looking at the microcosm of your issues. You're not looking at, you get this whole big picture of what the universe is made up of. You get this whole giant, you feel so small and humbled, and it kind of brings you to this state where it's just like the issues of your life seem less important, And there's a bit of that that
Right.
sticks with you throughout the course of your life. And I've noticed there's a bit of a web effect that's gone on with me and my choices as far as that's concerned, because I did LSD a lot when I was a kid too. And I don't doubt that that attributed to some of my creative endeavors. I don't doubt that that contributed to a lot of my just opening my mind and the choices that I made, and they're positive choices. Like I didn't really make a ton of, I don't really have from teenage years on, I didn't make a lot of bad choices. Like, sure, I didn't treat my body significantly great, but I also, went to university and followed a passion that I was um, really, really into. And so I don't know. I think there are definite positives to taking these things and utilizing them for what they were initially meant for, but they were kind of dumbed down by big pharma
Yeah,
because
the
they were,
powers that
yeah,
be.
the powers that
Yeah.
be. Exactly. That's a really good way
You
to
can't
call
make
them.
money off it.
Yeah, exactly. And nobody in those seats wants that. So that's changing now.
Yeah.
I think enough people are realizing the benefits far outweigh anything and speaking out.
We're starting to educate it. I think education is starting to catch up with, what's actually happening
Absolutely.
versus, I think it's probably the power of the internet that's probably utilizing people to do more research than just listen to all these commercials of people going on mass genocidal rampages after taking a hit of marijuana,
Yeah, like, is that even a thing? I would love to see if that's an ad. That's just insane.
uh,
Oh, it
there's a
makes me
movie.
laugh.
What was it? It was Reefer Madness. Have you ever seen
Oh,
it?
no, I've heard of it though. I don't think I ever watched it.
I mean, at this point, it's satirical. At the time, it was supposed to be like nonfiction,
Yeah.
but it was just like
Oh
all
my
about like
God.
how weed. I don't remember exactly, but it was basically like weed getting into the school system and people jumping out of windows and
Oh
killing other people, and
I wonder
it
what
was
the like the state of the people that created this, how they came up with these conclusions and how they could sleep at night knowing that they're pushing blatant lies. Like, and now it's satirical. Exactly. I wonder what we're looking at now as well, what we're going to look at as total satire in a decade from now, look back and be like, oh,
yeah.
so many face palms, so little time. How did we allow for that information to be common? I wonder.
Well, it's crazy. There's a quote my dad told me about. I don't remember who said it or coined it, but it was essentially like, first the truth is laughed at, and then it's violently objected, and then is it accepted as self-evident.
Oh, amazing. I wonder what stage we're
So
at
like
right
all
now, the
truth.
current state. I think
Well,
we're at,
it depends which truth I think you're
well,
referring to.
I think there's an overall arching truth of just where we're headed as a society and humanity in general. And I think right now it was laughed at last year because for those who are listening later on, we're in 2021 right now, the end of 2021. And I know in 2020 it was laughed at to think of where we are now, and now we're here. And so I think people are starting to accept where we're at. And so I wonder,
I mean,
yeah,
and that's, a huge, and again, I guess I don't want to try to come across as being egotistical, but I've kind of shut myself off from media
yeah,
like the last 5 years of my
good
life.
for you.
And, kind of when this whole like thing started getting rolled out, and I still need to bring on my San Diego roommate because I told him this like at least 200 times when they kept telling us like, oh, lockdown's only going to be 2
Yeah.
weeks, 2 weeks. And I sat there and I was like, no, it's not. It's going to be at least a
knew.
year.
Wow.
That's not how
you
this
knew.
works.
Holy crap. That's impressive.
Well, I was also making some predictions about how, and I mean, I don't know if this is why I don't really pay attention to the news, so I don't know if people accept this information or not. But I was even making, let's say, predictions, which I think held up in basis of reality, that the virus came out of that lab in Wuhan, and the reason that they're not going to get sanctions, China's not going to get sanctions, is probably because that the U.S. was funding it in some way, shape, or form.
And I think that's common
course,
knowledge. Is that actually like?
Is that common?
I know it's common.
I
It's
don't
common
know.
assumption. I don't common in such assumption. I don't know if it's verified or not. Like I haven't done enough digging on the sources that I've heard that from.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure even Canada was involved somehow.
Sure.
Yeah, but anyways, yeah, and at first people were like, no, gasping at the audacity of how could that ever be, and then enough came out, and people were like, oh, and that's where the acceptance come in. And what was the third one again? Sorry, out of that quote that you said.
Oh, it's I think it's laughed at, then it's violently ridiculed, and then it's accepted as self-evident.
Oh, okay, so maybe I think we're in the mid stage right now about being violently objected, and then almost at the acceptance stage. I see a lot more people that were on the fence of whether or not that they should accept the information that's coming from quote unquote conspiracy theories, tin
Yeah.
hatters, versus now a lot of people are like, oh snap, that happened. Oh crap, look
Yeah.
where we are. We're exactly where they said that they would be last year, and I was laughing hysterically at them.
Yeah.
So what else is possible, and what else? And I was kind of
So
in that,
crazy.
I don't want to believe this stage myself last year. I was like, nah, 2 weeks, no problem. Like, we got this. And then, as things started to unfold, people like you didn't seem so crazy anymore.
And it certainly was, and I don't want to make it sound like, I was like this all-knowing,
No,
omniscient
yeah, no,
person.
yeah.
It was that even in itself was still even a bit of a struggle, because I do remember, first of all, kind of going back and forth a little bit. I remember being a little bit weary of like the whole lockdown thing. Like, should I be afraid or shouldn't I? Like, I do remember kind of having that back and forth. And again, I think it's a concept of society. Like, I think that the media shapes so many people around you that, when you get laughed at or ridiculed in those stages of truth, you start to question yourself. You start to question, like, wait, okay, maybe, having those little maybes or those little self-doubts.
Yep,
But,
absolutely. How could you
it
not,
just,
when you're being bombarded with the
yeah,
same message over and over again? And it's relentless. It continues, and from
right,
so many different angles, and then
right.
that gets into people's brains. It's hammered in there. And so then even the people that you know and trust and love are telling you, they're just regurgitating information that they've heard from the media that's owned by the same freaking companies that are benefiting from all this. So, it's just like this whirlwind
Yeah.
of this. I like to call it a circle jerk. I don't know if I can say that on your podcast, but I
You
call
can
it
say whatever you
okay,
want. Fuck
awesome.
shit, piss.
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect.
Uncensored.
I call it a circle jerk, because that's exactly what happens when money gets involved and hands are shook and everyone kind of
There was a,
they're in bed together. So, and it's been happening since the dawn of time.
Yeah, there was a YouTube video, and maybe I'll have to post it on my Instagram or something, but it was a YouTube video of like, it's probably a minute long. And it was literally just like the opening or closing snippets of like news channels.
Oh, yeah.
And it would be like,
They're all
Good Morning
crazy.
America, brought to you by
Yeah,
Pfizer.
yeah, I saw
It'd be
that
like,
too.
and this is
Joe
Fox
Rogan
News,
had
brought
that
to you by
on his,
Pfizer.
yeah.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was brought to you by Pfizer.
yeah.
I was totally blown away. I was like, because I don't watch TV, so I have no idea. I have Gaia Network now, which I love. I'll give them a plug. Geez, it's been like a week and I'm obsessed. And then Netflix occasionally, but even I'm finding things planted into Netflix even. So I'm kind of getting on the way out of that myself, or being selective of what I watch and consume. But yeah, had no idea that's what advertisements look like now. It's like, holy crap, that blew my mind.
Yeah.
I thought it was
It's
fake at
like,
first. I was like, no, they're just putting Pfizer's logo in everything. No, it was real. Holy crap. Insane.
it's so
And
wild.
it's so
It's so
wild how
wild to
people
me.
just
It's
get
just,
inundated with, and it's second nature to them, and it just doesn't sink
well,
in that this is planted information.
I think there's a level, I mean, if you want to look at this as an energetic, place, I think whenever you drop somebody into a place of fear, it gives you the ability to control them at a subconscious level, because you're
Absolutely.
willing to do things, and they're willing to do things for their own good,
Exactly.
and me, I classify myself as a libertarian. And anytime I hear, especially government, say something like, we're doing this for your own good, little red sirens go
Yeah.
off in my head and say, wait. I'm going to decide what's for my own good.
Exactly.
You can give me the education. I'm all for, and that's kind of where I've always stood on this, is like, give us the information. Like, I'm all for the CDC being like, we recommend this, we recommend that.
Yeah.
But then once they start like making laws and saying, okay, you have to do this or have to do that, that's where in my mind, I'm like, okay, now you're going too far.
Yeah. And then to take it a step further, to even have people on the board of the CDC that used to work for other companies, and have biases and have funding. CDC is funded by some of these companies as well. So you really have to take a look at who's funding everything now, because it's,
Follow the money.
yeah, exactly. Follow the money. And FDA as well, thankfully that's a little bit more open than the CDC. And there's some, but like, again, I was looking at people who work at the FDA as well and where they used to work. And it's just like and the fact that people don't do their due diligence to kind of look into this and just blindly follow the information that they're given is dangerous, frankly. Like, it's dangerous. And when people have
Yeah.
something to gain, that's also dangerous. So, and like I know that there are people out there that have the actual best interests of humanity to heart. I know they exist. Like they're there. The whole world is not corrupt and evil, and there are people out there that are wanting to do the best for their fellow humans. But I don't know. There's also people
Yeah. And
again on
there's,
the polarity side of that. There's people that aren't. So we have to really take that into account. And that's a scary thing to think about for a lot of people.
sure, sure. I mean, I remember, it's so funny. I started having this idea of, how do I want to introduce it? I started having this idea of like, you know, I guess I started viewing the whole fear aspect of it in a weird light where I started saying to myself, like, I think if you, I started getting to this place where I started realizing like, half the country was saying like, don't get the vaccine, you're going to die. And the other half was like, well, if you don't get it, you're going to die. And I started getting to this place of like somewhere in the middle where I was like, well, wait a second. I was like, I started kind of, and this isn't something I articulated with anybody, but I was like kind of thinking to myself, like, well, if we're so powerful as humans, right? If we have, the universe inside us, it shouldn't matter in a sense. Like in my mind, I was like, well, I think your mind kind of makes up your reality. And well, it does, let's say.
Yeah.
But to the extent that it makes it up, it's like, I guess a good story to preface this where there was a guy who went into a doctor's office, and this is in Becoming Supernatural. And this is what made me think of this is he went into a doctor's office and the doctor said, you have terminal cancer. You're going to die in 4 months. The guy was like, oh shit. He put his like life in a fair. He dies in 4 months. Well, doing the autopsy, turns out that he didn't have cancer at all.
Yeah. So the placebo effect, but in the negative, essentially. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. The negative placebo. And so then that like got my mind thinking about this whole situation. And I started thinking like, well, I'd probably be fine if I got the vaccine if I choose that I'm going to be fine. Yeah. Like if I choose to believe that I'll be okay once they stick this in me, I'll be fine.
Transmuting,
I'll be fine if I don't get it.
Yeah, and we talked about that actually in my episode just with food, with myself and food. And this is not condoning eating garbage every day, and I don't, but I actually do eat pretty well. However, if I do, it's that transmutation that goes on. It's the looking at whatever it is that you're putting into your body, knowing that your body's strong enough to withstand and to transmute anything that goes on. And we touched on that with food, but that's a very valid point with this as well.
And that's actually something that I have started looking at with food myself is like, so there's a wild story I have, and maybe the most recent one I brought up was in episode 5 where, a long story short, because I don't want to retell this for a 10th time, but a long story short, I used to have bad acne on my neck.
Right.
Your neck in the chakra is represented by the color blue. I never ate blueberries, so I ate blueberries. It cleared up acne on my neck.
Yeah.
So I had a holistic nutrition girl, Hannah Olson, on one of my podcast episodes, and I told her this, and her first thing was like, well, how much of this was placebo and how much of this is, okay, our bodies actually work off the system.
Yeah.
And I didn't ask her this, but my what I keep thinking about is like, what if I would have asked her like along the lines of like, well, because we talked that entire episode about how sugar is bad.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what if we convinced ourselves that sugar was just as good as vegetables? Like, at what level are we able to, completely like transmute this stuff, or just say, well, I know it's a chocolate bar, but if I truly believe that it's going to provide me the nutrition to build out muscle.
Yeah. Yeah. Or
so I don't, so I'm kind of in a weird place now where it's like,
existentially speaking, I know we can to a degree, especially if you are in the 5D all the time. However, our 3D and our ego kind of has this battle with the 5D and the higher self. And so I think
hold on, wait, time out. We gotta
What'd I do?
We have to discuss we gotta discuss the difference between 3D, 4D, and 5D, right, because that's because just for me, that's a term that I've just discovered. Okay. And
sorry.
No. I'm happy that you brought it up. Cool. I think we got to discuss that for the people listening, because to me, that's a very new topic. And this kind of touches on what I was saying earlier about being able to transmute things like you were saying yourself. Right. So Uh,
So just to give a
let's,
quick brief lowdown on
yeah, give a
3D to
quick,
5D. So 3D essentially is like when we're looking, we can see our hand, we know we exist, we're purchasing items, we're going to work, we're in the shower, whatever. This is our 3D reality, everything that we can, so
it's
far
kind
as
of
we
like the
know, as we can see and
automatic,
touch around us. And then
it's like
4D,
that automatic response.
exactly. And then 4D, we start to question things. We start to question, and I was just learning about 4D not too long ago because I've always kind of understood 5D and 3D very well. But 4D, I was like, wait, we skipped a step. What the heck happened there? And so I did some digging, and I found out that 4D is when you start questioning that reality, and you start questioning our governing systems, and you start questioning little things, and you notice glitches in the matrix, if you will, and you're like, wait a minute, when it comes to over surge in power, and when it comes to over control and all that stuff, and you're like, and you get a little defiant and a little upset, and you're like, that's kind of your thinking is starting to think outside of the box at that stage. And then 5D is when you're in touch with your higher self, so your higher consciousness, if you will, like your spirituality. You really are starting to rise above the issues of the 4D and think more wholly in terms of just bettering yourself, making sure that you're loving the people around you, that you're loving yourself, and kind of moving away from about angst and defiance, and kind of living in a more peaceful state, and more yeah, and in
Yeah,
coherence
I
with the
think,
world around you, but with your spiritual self. Does that make sense? That's how I'm kind of
yeah, I
view it
think those are
anyways, and I
great.
wasn't expecting to have to give a definition, so I might come back and be like,
You brought it
5D is
up.
this too. Yeah, totally. I just haven't thought about the definition in so long, so I just like have
Yeah,
this conceptual idea in my mind and in my heart of what it feels like to step outside of my 3D body and observe the world around me without putting it into words. If that makes any
yeah.
sense at all. I mean, and that comes to a lot in meditation, and with to carry back around into hallucinogenics as well. Like there's a lot to be said that give us portals into other dimensions through the use of those. So, just to give it full circle.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's kind of how I understand it. If I could say it shorter, the best way I've just like heard it is like, Elizabeth April,
Yes,
who
I introduced you. Yeah, I
that's,
did. I send you. I was like, I don't know how you're going to take this or not, but
we're
give
going to
her a
touch and go
go.
on her.
Yeah, yeah,
We're going to touch and go. Like
yeah,
everyone should kind of, if you're interested, if that name resonated with you, go check her out.
yeah.
But
If
the
you
way
can
she
handle
kind of
alien
describes it,
talk, then yes, go for it. I find her fascinating and just lovely, and she's down to earth
it's so
considering her
wild.
topic. So she
Yeah.
presents it and delivers it in such a way that I was just like, oh, I don't know. And it kind of got me. Yeah, I'm glad I shared that with you. And I shared it with somebody else the other day
I
who
love
happened to
it.
be microdosing psilocybin. And he was like, yes. And he got it too. So if anyone's interested and has far out there ideas that we ain't
Yeah.
alone, then go check her out.
Um, yeah, that sent me down a rabbit hole.
Nice.
But let's. I'm still. That's so wild in itself because I personally, there's no way for me to possibly like have concrete facts that what she's saying is accurate.
Absolutely
But it's
not.
like
Yeah.
there's that
That feeling.
feeling.
Yeah.
There's that feeling at like an internal level. It's like, yep, that's what's happening. It's like,
Totally.
why the hell am I believing this? Yeah,
It's
it's like,
so
wait, what?
funny.
Like,
It's so
I just
funny.
accepted
When yeah,
that.
I felt the exact same way when she talked about the GFL. I was like, "What the heck is this?" And the Galactic
Oh
Federation. For those
gosh.
listening, I know it's like we won't go all the way down this hole of rabbits, but
I love this. Let me put it like this. I would love this rabbit hole and I would love to discuss it with you. I just personally am not aware if my audience is
and
at
yes,
this
for sure,
personally,
yeah.
So let's try to shape it as like, this is the little nugget
Yeah,
and I'll
there's
see
a
how people
nugget. Plant a
react to
seed.
this.
Go check it out if you want. And if
Yeah.
you're interested, then tell us that you're interested. We'll do another episode more in tune about
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah,
Perfect.
excellent.
Perfect. And so to get back to the 5D
Yes.
conversation, the way she like worded it that really resonated with me was like, 3D is, just that subconscious, just like I go to work, I do this. The media tells me I need the vaccine, so I get the vaccine.
Yeah.
That's 3D.
Yeah.
4D is,
in relation
I don't
to
know if
the
I should get the
vaccine.
vaccine.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
you meant
She's like
as an overall.
4D is Yeah, she's like 4D is like, I don't really know if I should get the vaccine. I don't know if it's the right thing for me. I'm not going to get it. And then 5D is
It
like,
doesn't matter.
it'd be fine if I get it or
Yeah,
don't. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And that's
yeah,
Transmutation again. And I should watch that episode of hers, but I do agree with that. And at the same juncture, I see the point. I understand how that is a thing, but at the same juncture, I think I'm still in the 4D to 5D realm when it comes to that. But
What do you mean? Like you're,
oh, I don't know. I just really believe that we should be, maybe we shouldn't get into too much of my beliefs around this topic because it's a little touchy with a lot of people, but I don't know. I think that there's so
either
much
way.
to learn. I think there's so much to learn right now, and it's way too soon to be assuming that we have the answer right now. And it's a pretty
Sure.
egocentrical because science is all about like learning new things and then questioning that and then doing research on that and then learning more and getting feedback and getting information and taking account of injuries and deaths on all sides. And we're not really doing
Well,
that a lot right now. A lot of it's being disregarded. So I wish that the forum was more open. I wish that certain voices were getting silenced, and I wish that we just took a little bit more time before swinging into high gear.
for
And it
sure.
kind of makes me go, okay, well, I'm just gonna sit back here, do my own thing until more is known, and just be on my own. And I am. I just podcast. I don't have kids, so like I think I'm okay, just chilling back, not doing anything.
Yeah,
I'm just mellow. I hang out in the woods. The trees are my friends.
uh,
So,
sounds lovely.
yeah, it is lovely actually. Yes. It is a good existence and I'm okay with that. I was never like the last couple of years, I really embraced being on my own, and I quite loved it.
Sure.
So I think, yeah, when all said and done, I'm just gonna hang out until, yeah, more is known. That's all I want. I just want more to be known.
Well, so we just went down an extremely long rabbit hole off of you going into the rave scene.
Yeah. Oh
So
yeah. Little nugget.
let's let's cycle it
Okay.
back, because the whole purpose, I guess, not the purpose, my whole objective is to kind of figure out how you figured out what you want to do with your life. So let's recap real quick.
Okay.
You wanted to be a lawyer.
Yes.
You found your mom moved you to LA,
Yes.
SoCal, which is a pretty big rave scene in and of itself. You kind of started experimenting with drugs and figuring out, your life and what you wanted and healing trauma.
Mm-hmm.
What was, kind of in that state of euphoria, maybe, how did and here's a big question, because this is kind of what my course gets into, is like, do you feel like, well, the question was going to be like, what was the next thing that you wanted to do when you grew up? And do you believe that healing that trauma helped you figure that out?
And my answer is going to be a couple of steps because it took
Sure.
5 years or so of doing a career, not even 5 years. I think it was less than that. I went to university for business, communications, and marketing. And then I got out of that and I worked in corporate. And that idea didn't come to me from feeling euphoric or anything. I come from a family where post-secondary education is imperative. Like there's just really no option. And so I did, and in that I was Vanessa Wilder, I called myself, because it took me so long to figure out what I wanted to do. I don't know if you know Van Wilder. So Vanessa
Yeah.
Wilder, I
Yeah,
kind
a
of used
little
that as
bit.
my MSN handle because I was in university forever just trying to
Okay.
figure out what the heck I wanted to do. And I just kind of floated from kinesiology because I love athletics and sports, and then into just business, and I kind of focused on communications because I figured that was well-rounded, and marketing, and I wanted to get out and help small businesses, and I ended up working in corporate. Hold on, I gotta fix this.
Got a little bit of mic issue.
Yeah, it's falling out, it's broken. And then I worked in corporate for a while and wasn't feeling fulfilled, and I wasn't fulfilling my creative endeavors as well, and I grew up in high school just doodling in my sketchbook every day, and at lunch you could find me in the art room, and I kind of was in this corporate world and wasn't satisfied. So I went back to school and I did digital art, new media, and that felt a little bit more fulfilling. So I combined the two and ended up starting my company called Local Media, which is still kind of active. I'm leaving it on the back burner right now for things we'll get into in a sec. But Local Media I started in 2012, and that was to help small businesses succeed. And so I was doing their marketing, and as well as their design, websites, photography. I'd work with other people occasionally and do social media and stuff like that. So, and that it just kind of came from step by step by step. It wasn't like I set this intention and I went for it. It's just like I kind of knew in the back of my mind that I wanted to watch small businesses grow because I worked in corporate and I was like, this is as soulless as it gets. And so that was the only intention that I really had. Didn't really know how I was going to get there without just taking these micro steps and kind of falling into it, honestly. Like, people have these like punctured in ideas of how they're going to get to point A to point B. I just knew that there was a point B and I was like, la di da di da, I'm going to do this. Oh, look, there's media school. Oh, cool. And then bam. But again, like kind of COVID hit and my business was already on the back burner because in 2016 is when my mom got sick. And so I was in a really toxic relationship for 7 years and my mom got sick and I moved back away from that relationship, which ended up ending violently. And so that was a trauma in itself. And my mom getting sick was a trauma and she passed away a few months after that. And then a best friend of mine passed away a few months after that. And then my stepdad, who was my only dad, he got sick and passed away a few months after that. So within 1 year, I had lost 4 things that were really important to me. The relationship, as toxic as it was 7 years of my life. And it was really important to me and my parents, obviously, that goes without saying, and MC. And so it was just like this clump of grief that I was working my way through. And that's when everything shifted. That's when my perception of what I should be doing just really kind of, I hit a what am I doing? Like, this isn't even enough. Like, there's more out there than just small businesses. Sure, they're important, but I mean, everyone goes through this process of grief and everyone kind of goes through, these devastating circumstances throughout their life. And there has to be a way to help people because I've made it through, and like how can I be a part of that angle? So that's when everything shifted and I started doing the EQ Cast podcast and more recently today, actually, some exciting news. I know I kind of messaged you and I was all excited. I had a book published on Amazon and it's called Moving Through Grief and a Journal to Inspire Healing. And so it's just a guided journal to help people move through their stages of grief. And they're more commonly 5 stages. And it kind of touches on them in the journal. And it just has prompts and reminders. And it's just a 1 line a day to write in your feelings, to acknowledge them, and to kind of help you move through grief. So, and that again, kind of all of this stumbled to me. Like I didn't have it took the massive year of trauma and then kind of coming out of the clouds with that to find how I'm doing now.
I guess it sounds like you were kind of stumbling through it when you were even in college too.
Oh yeah.
Is that fair? I mean,
Definitely.
it sounds like you were like in physical stuff and then you kind of went to marketing.
Exactly.
And then did you work in corporate for a bit after that?
I did. Yeah. I worked in corporate in 2018 when I graduated. I got a really good job actually right out of the gate. My interview skills, I guess, were on point. It was the first job I went for. And I worked for a company called Canada Secchi. And I was head of the marketing department immediately. And so I had some people under me. I was a 28-year-old kid. I was still a kid, I feel like. Oh, wait, that's how old you are. Crap,
27, right?
Right.
It's just a state of mind.
That's funny.
It's all right.
But yeah, I don't feel like anything I had been doing up until this very recent past has been intentional, It was fun.
Like you feel like you were kind of just going through the motions.
I was. Like I just felt
to go back to our earlier thing, like almost 3D.
Yeah.
You felt like you were in more of a 3D space.
And I knew there was a part of me then that knew that there was more. And that's why I felt so lost because I hadn't connected with that piece yet. And as soon as I did connect with that piece is when everything kind of started to come together. And I started working on things that were really important to me and things that actually meant something to me, rather than going through the motions. So, and it was making that connection.
That's actually really interesting. You mentioned that. And I'm thinking selfish reasons right now. So let's bear with it. But the course that I'm bringing out, I think I'd love to get your input on because
definitely.
I think my goal is to, basically bring people from 3D to 5D, I guess, or at least 3D to 4D. Right. And then I feel like once you hit 4D,
to do DMT, they'll hit 3D to 5D like that.
Just put out an ad for DMT.
Oh, I'm hilarious. I'm
Oh,
fired. Sorry,
jeez.
that's really on my mind
We
these
could,
days. We'll have to do a whole
it's
other
okay.
podcast.
Yeah.
But no,
No,
that's
we'll
great
we'll
with
talk
your
offline about that, but
yes,
I'd love to pick your brain about that.
absolutely. No, and I love that the course will also include guiding into higher realms of consciousness because that's exactly we need to be able to think for ourselves more right now more than ever.
Right.
And that's where that comes in is as soon as you realize that you are not only a conscious being, but you're also connected to everything else. It gives you individual thought as well as connection on a very spiritual level to the beings around you. I mean, I'm learning now that maybe not all of them are conscious beings, but I'm like, I thought
What do you
everyone
mean?
was,
Like,
but now I'm like, wait a minute.
uh,
But that's a whole other rabbit hole. We won't go down that one.
there's a funny TikTok video. Are you familiar with the term NPC,
NPC.
non-play
Oh,
non-player character or
yes, I
something?
actually just watched a movie where that was. Yeah. Anyways, I was like, what the heck?
Uh,
Yeah.
but like that, I think perfectly describes like the whole 3D model because so what it was is a TikTok and the guy's like, I'm gonna prove to you that like you can talk to random people and they're just NPCs, like non-playing
Yeah. Yeah.
characters,
Yeah.
which are
Yeah.
for people that
Just
don't
in the
know, it's like if
background of
you're
like a
in
video game or something. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, like if you're in like World of Warcraft or something, it's like people who are in the game, but they're
They're
not
not,
actual
yeah, they're
people.
not people controlling.
Yeah,
They're just kind of programmed
he
into the
like
game.
walks up to yeah, yeah, exactly. They don't actually have like a person controlling them.
Yeah.
It's like programmed
Yeah.
responses. And he literally was like, he walked up to some dude, like, he said something like, you know, good morning, Joseph. Here's like these coins for something. You know, have a good night or something like that. And like, you know, and then as he walks out, he's like, I didn't even give him coins. Today's Wednesday. It's not the morning. Like going through all these things, he's like, that proves to you that like you don't have to anyone you don't know is an NPC or something.
funny. Funny, and I could kind of see it. Like I just always assumed everyone has a consciousness and has this soul and has a higher purpose. But the more I'm witnessing what's going on, especially right now in the world, I'm just like, there's no way that there's
I mean,
solid goodness around
it's
that. I don't know. I have a hard time wrapping my brain around that, but
I love using the Matrix as an example to this kind of
yeah,
thing,
I just
right?
watched
I
that movie
think
again not too long ago. It's a
I just watched the sequels last
oh
night.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I had to rewatch it.
yeah,
It's funny. But I think I always use that example as like, you know, it becomes one of those things I think where it's like, well, you know, there's a level of even being aware that you are plugged in, and then where's the level of unplugging from that? Because I remember I kind of went through this like metaphorical 3D to 4D shift probably in college at some point, you know, 5 years ago, and I thought that's whenever I got unplugged. But now I'm discovering 5D and I'm like, no, no, no. Now I'm actually like unplugged,
right.
you
Yeah,
know? And so, I guess there's, you know, to go back to what you were saying about like, you know, if everybody has it, it's like, do they, are they not just aware that there's this other thing on the other side of it? Or is it just that they choose to look the other way? Like I mean, I guess I'm kind of asking you what you mean by like you feel like people, not everybody is able, or maybe you didn't really say that, but you feel like not everybody has that same thing.
yeah, and I'm not. It's impossible to say because I'm not really tapped into how their brain operates. But I feel like it's just like some light bulbs. Maybe that's a good analogy. Like using Christmas tree lights, for example. So you're stringing them and some of them go out like I don't know, back in the day one would go out and they'd all go out, but that's not the analogy I'm going for. I'm going for now when one just goes out, now they're capable of just like identifying the one bulb that goes out. And I'm just not sure if we're born maybe with this consciousness and throughout time that bulb can go out, with sedation through media overconsumption. Perhaps I haven't really thought too much into it. All I know is that I just look around me and I don't feel a connection with. I can't witness somebody else having a connection with anything, like, and it just seems so monotonous, their lifestyle. And does that make sense? Without, like, it's not a judgment, it's more of an observation. There's just kind of
Yeah,
uncertainty
I
if
think
there.
I've
Does that make sense?
yeah, and I'm not sure if this is a. I mean, I guess I'm not sure how valid it is for me to say this, but I feel like I've seen that or I've really been picking up on that whenever I walk by people like on the street. Because I'm always trying to make eye contact. I mean, number one, I'm in Brazil now, so I'm always happy to just say hi to whoever wants to look at me.
Yeah.
But there's also that level of like, I don't wear a mask, and a lot more people wear masks down here, like just out and around.
Yeah.
So there's a mixture of, one, the people who will avert eye contact, the people that will kind of look at you, but you can feel they're judging you for not,
Yeah.
they kind of look at you judgmentally.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other people who make eye contact, and then they're super like, hey, like, you make that eye contact to connect with them.
Yeah.
And I think that might be sort of what you're
definitely. And like some people are also too just having bad days, and they're in their ego and in their 3-day self, and obviously you got to take that into account. But I just observe like the mass amounts of greed and the self-focus that goes on with zero desire to create that connection that you're looking for when you're making eye contact. And yeah, it's just for all for one and one for all, not one for all for one, period. And that's kind of it. Because one for all would say, hey, I'm with you too. But it doesn't feel like that's happening for a lot of people. And it's greed based, and it's not so much power based with the general populace, but I do think it's kind of greed based and like going for the next best thing all the time. And it's consumerism, and it's just having those blinders on. I don't know if that can be untapped through other means, like through self-identification, through identification with your higher self. I have no idea if that's possible with everyone. I don't know. It's really hard to say, because you see people waking up, quote unquote, all the time, and having these conversations is more common than it used to be. But I'm really not sure if it's possible with absolutely every being on the planet. But who knows? I mean,
there's a level of being comfortable, right? Because first of all, it takes, I think, a level of wanting to break out of your zone of comfort in order for you to want to do this type of, or have these types of thoughts even.
Yeah.
And I think then the next level is, it's like, and here's how I kind of started thinking about it, was like with the whole pharmaceutical situation, is I kind of always thought, like, at least in my progression, because we relate everything to ourselves, is, okay, do they just have a fear-based mentality that's saying, well, like, if I'm not making more money off of this, then somebody else will. So even though I've made billions of dollars, let's say, I need to make a billion more because there's fear.
Yeah.
Or are they coming from a place of suppression, let's say, where it's like, well, I don't know how to really word this. Is it more, I want to hold back the human population and make them more diseased and create more fear because there's more control in that? Like,
I think the two are married. I think the two are married. I think living in a state of lack in a constant basis versus abundance, which people who have high connection with their 5D self or their higher consciousness, I think they live in more of a state of abundance. And I say they because, I fluctuate in and out. I think we all do fluctuate in and out of that consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
I go back to 3D, like bat out of hell sometimes. I'm like, how do I get back here so quickly? But I do think that it comes from living in a state of lack and their own personal fears and their own personal upbringing and environments. And because I come from a good family myself, when I say good family, I mean like a family that was very monetarily focused and had a lot of power, I guess, still power and prestige in this country, and are used to anyways. My grandfather is a senator, and so he was in politics, and I do know, like, there's some go for good, like they're trying to make a difference, but then again, some are there for power and greed. So
right.
I don't know. There's such a polarity there, and I do believe, and I hope moving forward, that more people that have the best interest for humanity, that aren't just powered by money, fear, all these lower level vibrational frequencies, and money, fear, lack, all that power,
shame, guilt.
Well, those are the core of them, right? So that's where they come from, shame and guilt. But little do we know is like a lot of those more aggressive states of feelings or vibrational frequencies, I guess, like fear, come from shame and guilt. And that's the misconnection that we're having, I find quite often, is that no one's being vulnerable enough to admit that they're shameful or they feel guilt, you know what I mean? And so it perpetuates this like
So
crazy.
are you saying are you trying to say that people who are in fear have an underlying
I
thing of
believe
shame and
so. I
guilt that is
believe so.
propelling?
I believe so.
Okay,
I think it can propel. I don't think in every single circumstance, obviously, it's going to vary, but I know for me, like when I feel fearful, it's usually and a lot of it's sadness too. Like some of it I'm scared, for example. Like so when I'm angry, like when I get mad at my dog for taking off like she did last night when the fireworks exploded, she ran way home. I was like so mad at her, but my underlying feeling, if I really dug down, was was fear. It wasn't anger, it was fear. You know what I mean? And so maybe the same
sure.
can be true with like when people are greedy, like they're fearful that they're not going to have enough because they're living in a lack state of mentality. Um,
And if we dissect the situation with your dog,
yeah,
so you were angry, but that was an underlying of fear of her getting hurt.
yes,
But then was there an underlying feeling of maybe shame or guilt that you let her escape?
probably, absolutely. If we keep digging into that, it's like I didn't have her on a leash, and it was. I did actually. Now that
I'm
I'm,
just
yeah,
curious.
no, and that makes sense because I was
Yeah.
holding the leash in my hand. I'm like, oh my, it's like right here. It's 6:30 at night. It's getting dark. Like she's a tiny dog. So,
Yeah.
I didn't spend too much time in it. I was just so bloody relieved that she was okay. But, there was immediate awareness that I was mad at her because I was afraid. That part I really touched on. I was like, hey, you're
Okay.
forgiven. Keep going.
Yeah.
But and not to
All right,
her, to
forgive
me,
you.
I forgave myself. I forgave her
Oh,
immediately. No, I forgave
okay.
myself.
Yeah.
I was like, you're allowed to get
Yeah.
angry. And that's kind of where my thought of, yeah, you're forgiven to me about overreacting or just reacting. I don't even think it was an overreaction. It was just a reaction.
Which is, I know, is a beautiful thing about transcending negative energy, right? It's like accepting,
And
and that sounds like
observing,
you
just,
kind of just hit that state of acceptance and
yeah, an
observation. Yeah.
observation. And it's as soon as that you come into the realization that you're having that emotion, as soon as that you make that connection, that's already a step in the direction of ascension, and you just have to be willing to look at your grievances and what the heck you're doing in order. But a lot of people don't even want to look. They're just like, oh, no, 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 no. I
Yeah.
don't want to see this. Like, I just get
Well,
angry because I'm
that's,
angry. And it's a vulnerable thing to have to
yeah.
do to open up to those other realms of feeling.
Yeah. And this is a whole segment in my course, but like there's a level of like kind of like the pain body where you become comfortable
Yeah,
feeling those feelings. And this
exactly.
is something that like kind of
Eckhart
blew my
Tolle
mind.
talks
It's
about
like,
pain body a lot. Yeah,
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 and it's like, yeah, if you are so accustomed to these feelings of anger and fear and shame and guilt, and like you at some level start to identify with like that's who you are,
yeah,
and it goes the same with like the emotion and thought loop, where it's like if you keep having the same thoughts and the same emotions, you're like, okay, well that's just who I
yeah.
am,
You're gonna
and
stay
I'm
in the
just
same
gonna
pattern.
accept.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's so
Until
easy
you
to do that. It's
actually,
comfortable. Our ego loves comfort. Our ego
Mhm.
loves or it's terrified of change. It really doesn't like evolution or change. And this can come back to our other topics of why people are so afraid of other information that's coming out about our current state because it's change. It's disrupting everything that they know about the powers that be and the people that have shaped their reality, so far in their entire life that have made the rules.
what information are
Oh,
you
I just mean like
pointing to?
just where we're at right now with 2021 and
Okay.
2020 information surrounding the pandemic and everything like that. And when people's it gets disrupted, and that's change and the ego doesn't like change. So it's like, oh, new information, just to bring it full circle to what we were talking about a little bit earlier. But
Mm,
then people are like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this information because it's different than what I'm used to. And that's just the ego clinging on to anything that's new information or evolution of thought. And it's terrifying for a lot of people. And I do understand that because I have been there, but things just
right.
get so much
And
better when you
it's
actually,
crazy. It does that whole rabbit hole where it just like kind of pulls you back down.
yeah, it certainly does.
So let's I guess so we complete another rabbit hole. um so then you kind of, what was it? You were into college and you kind of were messing around with some different ideas. You weren't really sure what you wanted to do and all that. And then you got into working for a corporate
International
organization.
distribution company. Yeah.
international distribution. You were doing their marketing and their sales for that.
Not sales, but
And
yeah.
then,
But yeah.
or not sales, just marketing. And then you spun off and you went to small business route. So you started, did you just like kind of start your own small business off on
I
scratch?
did, yeah.
And just,
After finishing, after wrapping up working for corporate, I went back to school, and it was in media school where we had to come up with a project. And it was kind of like, it was art school, it was digital art as well as regular art, and we did websites, photography, and all kinds of fun stuff. And in that we had to come up with a project. And so my project was my business. It was local media. And I was like, well, I can two birds, one stone. I'll start a little side venture and see what happens with it. And I'll also have a project for class. So, and little did I know, I just did the branding and I loved it so much. I was like, oh, really got to make this work. And so, and I kind
yeah,
of
the branding just took it off.
yeah, it did. And I plugged away at that for a while. And it evolves. It has evolved a few times to collaborate with other like-minded people. And right now, it's just on the back burner while I think of its next evolution. But with my first book published, I might turn it more, because it's called media, so it really can be anything. I was considering doing more publishing with that and spreading information, because I think
Interesting.
that is the most important thing that we can do right now, is to bring awareness and to spread information.
So let's speaking of that, which I guess media and books is a huge way to do that. What's that whole process like? Because I've had some thoughts of like, I don't know, like considering, let's say, for two reasons. One is publishing like a book of some sort, because one, I guess it boosts a lot of credibility in the whole, media space. It gives people something to look at you and say, oh, okay, like here's a deeper understanding of this person. So like, what was that process like of writing your own book?
It's not even a full book. There's only probably, it's a journal. It was the design element. And it was, for me, it didn't even start with credibility. For me, it was like, I really needed something like this. Like when I was going through my healing process, I could have used something like this. And I don't know, something just kind of had a light bulb moment one day, because I write in a journal all the time. And I was like, guided journals, like what? I'm just looking at blank pages right now. There's just so many blank pages. And one day I just didn't know what the heck I was writing. I was like, I don't know what I feel like writing today. I was like, a prompt would be nice. Like, hey, why don't you think about this? Or why don't you give me some feedback into this? And so I don't know, it just kind of started from there. And for me, yeah, it did not come from a place of credibility. If I wanted to do that, I probably would have put more than 500 words or however many words are in it. But it was just more of a nice, safe space for people to feel guided in their healing process. And
So is it kind of just like a journal that's designed to ask certain questions to kind of direct you down the...
Yeah, exactly. And so it goes through the stages of grief. It goes through breathing exercises. It goes through just reminders of eating well and to get outside and just, and it just has some of my words in it and my own, with making it removed for myself as possible. It's not like a personal thing about me at all, but just more broad spectrum about the process of grief and how unpredictable it is, and just that it's okay to feel all those things, and just reminders that, what you're going through is your journey, and to embrace it, and to, yeah, just things like that for the most part.
Some like more meta ideas per se.
Exactly.
So was it I guess I have quite a few questions. So then how do you like distribute it, and do you have like a distributor
I
that
just went
you've
through
like kind of gone
Amazon.
to?
Honestly, I designed it because I learned how to design in school, and I've always done that. So for me, it was really easy. If you don't have a design background, I'm not sure how you'd go about doing that. It just started off as a fun little project for me to design, and I have a girlfriend of mine who, I love her art. Actually, it's in the background. If you're on YouTube, you can see a piece of her art right there. But I loved one of her pieces, and I used it for the cover. And funny enough, when I pointed out that I love that piece specifically for this, because I'm going to do a series of journals. This one was geared towards younger women, but I'll probably do one for older women and for men as well. Just the artwork, and I guess it was geared, anyone could use it, but for this piece specifically, and she was like, "That's amazing that you chose that out of all the pieces that she has. This one's called A Journey in Grief." And so the one I picked
Really?
for the cover, yeah, it's called A Journey in Grief, and it actually had the word grief in it, and so it was very synchronistic. But I took that piece and then I worked it into a cover art. And so, yeah, it was a fun little design project for me. I got to get creative again, which I hadn't done in quite a while. And so it was just more um, cathartic and therapeutic, I guess you could say. It was just a process
Yeah,
for me
that's
too. Yeah,
awesome.
it was good.
You're helping people. I
I
mean,
hope so.
you cover all the basics,
Yeah,
right?
I hope so.
It's therapeutic for you. You get to help people.
Exactly. Absolutely.
I mean, I feel like that's kind of just, I don't know, to me, like that's how I've been trying to just view like this whole thing, right? Is just like, I want to be able to just help people, like create stuff that helps people,
Exactly.
in the best way possible. And it seems like that's, you talk about two birds, one stone. It's like, I truly believe like the point of money, let's say, is, to show the value that you're adding to society.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're able to create something that's helping people, let's say transmute 3D to 4D to 5D,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then also make money off it, it's like,
Yeah.
I can't think of a better, thing to do, right?
And money is
It's
energy,
like,
right? And so you're putting your energy into something. It only makes sense as that energy is going to come back to you in another form, and that's why some of the
that's a good
endeavors that
point.
I'd worked on hadn't been so successful because I wasn't so emotionally invested. And what it didn't, that
Okay.
energy I was giving it may have been a bit more lackluster than it is now because everything I do is so personally connected with my own progress and my own path and what has exactly brought me here rather than just floating through the motions. And since that energy is going in, it would make sense that the energy comes back. I don't know, today is the first day that it's been out and I haven't even told anyone except for you that it's out. I literally found out about 2 minutes that the review was accepted. So I had
That's
submitted some
awesome.
changes. So honestly, it's so new. But ideally that's what we do is we find something that we're passionate about because we have that emotion behind it to back it. And since that is energy, it's going to go into something wholeheartedly and come back to us. And in the process, we are ripple affecting what's happening in the world around us in a positive way. Hopefully, that's the end goal.
I mean, that's a fascinating way to look at it, right? Is like that transfer of energy is able to come back to you monetarily. I mean, it makes sense, to me at least, because I believe in karma and all that, and it's just like, how are you able to kind of get it to come back? And maybe this is actually a good idea to ask you this, like from the marketing side of things, because I'm kind of battling this myself with, like, are you aware of like the whole idea of like a sales funnel?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Oh yeah.
assume, yeah.
Yeah.
And so right now I've made all the digital course, right? But now I'm trying to put together the sales funnel.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like at some level I'm over analyzing it because it's like, it's that level of like, well, I want to like, I want to be able to help people and know them that I'm helping them. But then at the same time, I'm not trying to, like, there's an overthinking involved, let's say.
Yeah.
And so I guess I'm curious, in your mind, like how much energy is like energy, at what level do you kind of put the effort in, right? Because I feel like there's this balance you kind of need to play with where, if you spend 100 hours on creating a very basic sales funnel, it's, your return on investment isn't really going to be there. Is
Yeah.
there a way you're able to kind of make a correlation between effort versus, almost like
100
effort
hours on a
versus
sales
like
funnel seems
ROI?
100 hours on a sales funnel does seem excessive. I know there are ways
Oh yeah, I
to
was
cut that
I was
back,
being
but yeah,
extra.
I was like, that's a
Yeah.
lot.
I
And in that case, I'm
was
not really
being
sure.
extra there.
But I think, yeah, I don't know. I think anything that I don't know if I'm going to answer this properly because I honestly haven't worked with a sales funnel in at least a few years. I don't know how much they've changed in that time. But to me personally, like when everything's get too salesy, and I don't know because I haven't had a chance to market my book and I don't know how in depth I'm going to go with it. It's the first one. It was just kind of a trial. I think I probably want to refine and perfect it before I do go too full bore with it. But yeah, I think that if you are doing it with the intention of just selling rather than helping, that energy is gonna kind of infiltrate your product or your idea. Does that make sense? So I don't know if
That
that's going to
makes
be too
sense.
much of a 5D answer for you, but yeah, things have just changed so much with sales funnels. So I'm not really sure where they're at in the last few years, but I'm interested to take a look and find out more. And then you and I can touch on this again when we both get
Yeah,
more
for
fully up
sure.
and running. But
Yeah, I mean, let's definitely, we don't have to bog this down too much, but let's definitely have some sort of conversation about
Absolutely. Absolutely.
energy and sales and money and all that fun stuff.
Definitely.
Um, but yeah, I guess a reason I also kind of brought that up was because I saw a post of somebody who has like 200,000 followers. He was saying how, what was he saying? He was saying like how you just need to post things that are like just good enough. Like, you know, you don't really need to make like an A plus post for, you know, social media. As long as it's like a C plus to B minus, like you're good.
Yeah.
And so then that
I
kind
agree.
of also pushed me down the rabbit hole of like, you know, with this whole, like kind of with my course, like, you know, I've made these videos and I'm going to send you them at some point.
Mhm.
And I've made the videos and I have them uploaded, you know, it's all packaged, but you know, at what it becomes that like, you know, and this is where I'm kind of tying in that energy and money. So we could even look at it from like the presentation, right? It's like how much becomes too much where it's like, and maybe this is just a feeling thing and I feel like I'm rambling here.
Okay. You're
But does
not.
it
You're
kind of
not.
like make sense? No?
No, you're not
Okay, cool.
rambling. Yeah, no, you're good. And I'm following. I just also kind of disagree with the not every. I don't just post for the sake of posting. I don't structure my posts. I'm not very um, deliberate when it comes to my social media. You can probably tell I'm very inconsistent. I was good at running other people, and I didn't do it myself. I would contract out when it came to social media because it's just such a micro. I'm like, I don't have time for my own, let alone somebody else's. But I only post when I feel inspired to do so, you know, or I'll write something and then I'll find a better time to do it. Sometimes I'll wake up at 3:30 in the morning, seems to be my go time, and then I'll have like an inspiration to write something. Obviously, I won't be posting it then, but I do think the more intention we put with our things. So I don't know. I mean, sometimes I also just post something because it just, and I don't put any effort into it, but it strikes me in a way, and it made something for me that day. I'm not just posting for the sake of posting. You can tell by my very sporadic
Right.
social media posts. If that were the case, then I would be posting every day, but I don't. And I just post when something really kind of strikes me, you know, or I have that surge of inspiration. To go back to that, I know you kind of
Well,
veered off from that, Jen,
sure. No, no, no.
but
This is perfect because I think the same meta conversation I'm trying to have here is outlined in this, where like I believe that same thing. Like I want to only be posting things that inspire me to post them.
mm,
Now there's another element of the conversation that says, well, you need to post X times a
yeah,
day if you want to get
for the
followers, right?
algorithm or
Because
whatever. Yeah.
yeah, and I want to help people, right? Right. So this is all like in this big picture of like I want to help
Yeah.
people. How do I help people? I feel like I need to have followers or be posting X times a day. But if I'm not energetically aligned with posting X times a day, well, then it's not going to be authentic. Therefore, am I even going to be attracting the right followers? But if I'm not attracting followers, then I'm not able to help them on the grand scale.
Exactly.
You kind of see how that,
Yeah, I do. It's a bit of a
yeah,
conundrum. And I just kind of work my way through it slowly. And I find that the best way that I have managed myself, which has been super slow going, and I'm sure if I did this every single day, it would be better. But I don't. But it's actually engaging one on one with people. Like I'll find an account that I like, I actually enjoy, and their content, and I will go through a bunch of it, you know. And I don't take like hours to do this, but I just don't do it consistently enough. And then actually engage with them. That's how I've had some of my guests on the podcast, and I've created meaningful relationships with them. And to me, that's, and you're gonna attract the people that are more intricately connected with what it is that you have to offer, you know, and vice versa. So I think that's also an important part that we lose in the mindset of gaining more followers. You know, we just kind of think rather than making the connections, which I think is the most important thing. And then once you make the connection, you know, and you create a bit of a community vibe within that. And I think that's more important than the number of followers you have. Like, yeah, that's just my personal thought. I don't spend a lot of time
yeah. And
thinking
I
about
mean,
social media, and I know I should again. I have just been more focused again, like on just trying to figure out what it is that resonates with me, and then create something. And my hope is that by creating these little micro connections, I guess it's a subconscious hope because I haven't been putting too much attention and intention into that, that something transpires from that, you know. So we'll see if this
Right.
works. I guess maybe it's just a little theory I have right now.
And I mean, no, it's completely valid in my opinion because, right, I fully believe quality over quantity at the end of the day. I think that resonates far more and makes life more meaningful than, having, 100,000 followers versus having just 100 who actually like truly love what you're doing.
Exactly. And a lot of those 100,000, a lot of those accounts too, because you can purchase things so much nowadays
Sure.
that it's just the relevance of how many followers you have. It's the interaction that you have with them. It's the community that you're building around what you're creating is really important, and that gets lost in
That's a good point.
the hey, look at me subculture that we have. That's just drowning out anything of substance, unfortunately. But
And that's a good point, right? I mean, it's almost better to grow slower, take your time growing it such that you are having
you're curating
more genuine, the base, the foundation of a building, they start with that, like before they can build the building. And it's, you want to have that foundation of followers who are what you're looking for, like the people that you want to connect with, the people you want in your circle.
Exactly.
And that's just what is going to be able to create a stronger foundation so that it can support whatever's getting built on top of it.
100%. Yeah. And I think that's vital. And that's why mine has been so slow to grow. And it's also consistency too. It's all the things that you've mentioned, plus consistency is a huge, you can set all the good intentions you want and create a couple great connections, but if you're not consistent in building every day, that building's not going to finish. So, and that's where I struggle. And I'm trying really hard to just stay focused and stay clear-minded. And that's where my meditation needs to, and that's really hard for me as well. So I'm actually turning back to plant medicine again. So to go back to medicine, to help me clear that out, to stay consistent, because I can't even stay consistent with my meditation. And so that helps me stay consistent. But if you can't get through that barrier, that helps you get to that other barrier. So I'm going back to plant medicine myself. I'm actually doing San Pedro coming up here pretty soon. Yes.
I think I've heard of it, but I'm not too familiar.
It's a cactus. Wachuma, it's another name for it. It's in the family of like ayahuasca. A lot of people know about. It's a little more lighthearted than ayahuasca, and it's a little less daunting, a little less darkness, but a lot of enlightening properties, and rewires that brain of ours.
Is it DMT as well then?
No, there's not DMT in it, but DMT is added to ayahuasca, which is actually a brew. It's a tea. It's not just a singular plant. But San Pedro is a singular plant. It is a very tall, skinny cactus. And yeah, I just want to get back to basics and back to nature with some of the ways that I go about living my life. So you'll be hearing more about that on my podcast. I'm going to be telling people all about my adventures. I'm sure it'll be on my YouTube channel. But that's coming up really soon in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that.
You have to tell me about it because I always love hearing about that type of stuff.
Absolutely. I'm very excited myself. So it's been a while since I've done anything aside from psilocybin. So
yeah, therapeutic setting, psilocybin's all I've ever really worked with.
Very cool. I haven't done it in a therapeutic setting, but yeah, I'm interested to do that as well. Did you have the mask on and the headphones and everything? Very cool.
The mask for sure. I don't think we put on headphones, but it's something in its own right,
Amazing.
There's all different ways of people want to do it, and
I mean, I microdosed last weekend. I would like to do it. I would like. My friend just makes these amazing chocolates. It's really hard to. They're always just around. I'm like, oh, just a little bit. But it's
just a ton.
Yeah, it's just brilliant. What like a little tiny bit. Just throw some colors on these, and I laugh so much already. Like I know that's not far-fetched for me, but I don't know. It's a nice way to reopen those little portals that. It's so easy for us to shut out.
It feels like it clears, like even if you're doing it like microdosing or just like kind of for fun, it seems like it still just clears out like if your brain's like a file system or something and you're just like recording all this stuff, it like the way I see it is it kind of just like gets rid of all the files that like aren't serving you, that aren't like concrete, like,
Definitely.
you
They're
might have taken a
accumulated
note,
junk
like,
files. Let's just call them that. They're
yeah,
accumulated junk files.
yeah,
They're
it clears out the
cached.
junk.
They're cached.
Yeah.
The cache folder. Clear that shit out.
Yeah, yeah, it just clears your
Yeah,
cache.
it clears your
I mean, that's a
cache.
perfect way to
It
describe
totally
it.
is. I
Like,
love it.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
perfect. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, my computer was running so slowly the other day too. I was having so many issues and I was trying to finish the design of the book, and it's so funny. And I cleared my cache, and it was the Monday after. It was this past Monday. No, it was last week. Sorry, this was last week. It was the Monday after I had done a little bit of microdosing, and I was like, "Oh, my computer's running now." How I felt on the Monday after going for a little swim in the clean out pool.
I'm a software engineer, and
Right.
honestly, it's pretty crazy how many like similarities there are between like computers and like the way our brain works.
And
That
the
it's a
wiring and
little
how it
trippy.
looks too. If you look at the actual
Yeah,
web of the internet, and if you look at fungi, for example, under the earth, and how that's all webbed, and you look at our interconnections in our brain, and you look at how plants are the micro organisms of plants, and they all have very similar
the
physical
cosmos,
attributes. Yeah, and the cosmos, exactly,
universe. Yeah.
very similar physical attributes, and it's mind blowing. Like, and it just goes back to everything's connected, and it's all energy, and the things that we create, our energy is going into it, and of course where we're coming from. And I'm just having this thought right now, but if we're creating something, we're putting our energy into it, so it kind of makes sense that it might come out as to what looks like the inside of us, and where we came from. That's
So,
there's another part
so
of it.
here's an interesting question. I know you follow a podcast that talks about the connection between cryptocurrency and spirituality.
Yeah.
Are you, are you able to kind of give me like a little bit of a crash course on how there's I mean, energy and all that?
Yeah, well, it's
Completely
more to do
agree.
with
We talked about
energy than
this.
spirituality. I mean, they touched on, and the podcast is called The What Is Money Show, and it's with Michael Sarah, and he's just the guest on it. The actual guy who hosts it, I can't remember his name right now, but Michael Sarah. Wait, no, that's the actor. Uh, anyway, the
Yeah.
What Is Money Show. I'll just stick with that. But essentially, they're just talking about more how money is energy, and they just talk about um, kind of what I was talking about earlier a little bit about how when you can put your energy into something and it can reproduce sort of. I don't know the way they do it. I couldn't do it any justice, honestly. Their podcasts are so long. There's a whole series about them. I would highly suggest. Like I can't just make it into a
Okay.
tiny thing, but they do touch on it being more of a spirituality because it has a following. Like it has people that are very devoted to it, and so they make that connection rather than it actually being like a religion or anything. They just talk about how the people that are ingrained in that culture are just like it's turned into a, a spiritual kind
Yeah.
of way of life. They just really believe in it, there's a belief
Yeah. It's
factor.
very, yeah. I mean, you can see that. We briefly discussed, like, you can see that on Reddit pretty strongly. It's
Yeah,
like, people are just, you just buy and hold. Like, that's really the plan for it.
yeah.
It's like there's no end to it. And oh, I just lost my train of thought. Just buy and hold.
So,
Yeah. I remember seeing like a tweet or something where somebody was like, yeah, like the only way to invest in it, and this is not financial advice,
yeah.
but he was like, the way I invest in it is like 90% of my savings are in crypto and 10% is in cash. And the 10% I use is to buy the dip. Like, you know,
That's funny.
anytime it dips. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I've been doing a little bit more digging off some info to send on you too.
Yeah.
Lastly,
We got to talk about that.
yeah.
Yeah. So where were we at? We were in your journey. Let's see here.
I don't know, but I do only have 10
Did we
minutes
make?
before I have to go. Just
Oh,
a
you
heads
do?
up. Yeah, because I have that appointment. I
It's
told you
funny
that.
you say
It's
that because I
1:30
started
already.
like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Almost
okay.
1:30.
Because I think we got through it anyhow,
Yeah,
right? We got through your
almost. Yeah,
journey
I think so. I'm pretty sure because we ended up right where I'm at, which is the book
with your
and the
book.
podcast and the YouTube channel. And
Okay,
okay,
well,
over here.
so we're
We're
back.
back.
All right, guys. If you heard a weird cut, there were some weird recording issues, but we're back now. And Christy, I wanted to thank you for joining
Thank
me.
you.
This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for
It was a
having
great
me. It definitely
conversation.
was. Yeah.
Before we sign off and anything, is there anything you want to plug? Anything you want to encourage people to do?
Just yeah, do your own research. Start looking into yourself. And if you want to find me on Instagram to talk about it, I'm at eq.cast. And my website is eqcast.co, and all my stuff's on there. Any way to connect, drop me an email. Come say hello. I'm always open to having these conversations. I absolutely love them. And thank you so much for having me. Great conversation. as always.
And don't have too many conversations with her, because I want to have some more conversations with her. So
my energy is unbounded and limitless. So just kidding. No, that's not true.
Touche.
Awesome. Well, thanks again.
That's for our next combo.
Yeah, definitely. Excellent. Well, thanks so much, everyone. And see you, Clayton.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
So guys, go like, share, review all my stuff, review all of Christy's stuff, and keep an open mind about all this type of stuff. I know we went down some weird rabbit holes today, but
I love it.
I love them as well. And so we'll it's crazy because there's more levels to this, but we'll leave you guys as a little teaser, and let's keep growing together.
Absolutely.